Okay, now I'm going to walk you through learning about annotated bibliographies. So I'm looking at the D2L for my morning class just because it's the first one available, but it should be the same for the second period class. So if you go to content and then week 9, you'll be in the genre study and annotated bibliography section of the course. You can see that this is under the unfamiliar genre project over here on the side, and then it says week 9, resources, research, and writing. So the PDF document of the slideshow that I just went through for the sonnets with you is there, and there's also the news article that I gave you in a handout form earlier today. The annotated bibliography MTSU 1010 document was also given to you on a handout earlier today, as well as this sample genre annotated bibliography and the unfamiliar genre project. All right. Still, I'm going to click here and go through this document with you quickly. You can see that this comes from the textbook Writing Outside Your Comfort Zone, helping students navigate unfamiliar genres. And so these are annotations that students did for these teachers who have taught the unfamiliar genre project before. Now, these were high school students in a regular high school English class, not in a college course. And so I expect your annotations to be more nuanced, perhaps, more rigorous than the annotations that you see here, but this is a good place to begin. So they ask you at the top of this handout, what makes an annotation good, right? They want you to ask yourself how these were written and what in these samples are helpful to you. What else you might want to know? How was this sample put together? What can I learn from this sample? And by the sample, they mean each annotation, okay? So you're going to learn from these annotations just the same way that I'm hoping you'll learn from examples of the genre that you've chosen. And so for us as a class, the annotated bibliography is another unfamiliar genre. So let's look at Bailey Yee's annotation. She's working on political pamphlets, or he, I guess Bailey can be an either gendered name. And so they're annotating here an example by Thomas Paine. You've probably heard of this in your American history class, Common Sense, right? So they've given the information for the pamphlet there. I'm just going to zoom in a little so you can see better. They've given the citation information, and then they've got an annotation. One of the most influential pamphlets in American history, Paine's Common Sense is most certainly a masterpiece of persuasion and coercion. In his eloquence, Paine leads the reader from the concept of natural rights to the Bible to the contemporary state of American affairs. As you arrive at the end of the piece, you would not carry any doubt of Paine's assertions, for the path from which you came has become narrower and narrower, to a point where all possible objections are addressed and the opinion thoroughly supported. It is as if Paine was building this piece up for such an effect, which, indeed he was. This piece is an excellent example of a well-written political pamphlet and helped me immensely with composing my own. So this is a pretty good annotation. He's not summarizing Paine's arguments, you'll notice. He's telling you how Paine has crafted those arguments in the form of the pamphlet, right? So he says this is a masterpiece of persuasion and coercion. It's eloquent, and Paine leads the reader from the concept of natural rights to the Bible to the contemporary state of American affairs. Then when you get at the end you get to the end of the piece, you have no doubt what Paine thinks. And also, it's harder to argue with him because he has narrowed your field of perspective, right? So this isn't a summarization of or a summary of the content. This is a case where the student has summarized the form of the essay or the pamphlet in this case. And that's what I'm looking for from you, okay? A summary of the way the genre works in the example that you're covering. So here's another. Brian Lee is annotating The Lovely Bones by Alice Sebold. And he says, this book probably influenced me the most, even though I did not read all of it. I liked the approach of the future going back. So he's talking about the unorthodox, non-chronological organization of the novel. I like the fact he says that everything has already happened when the story starts, and the main character looks back and describes things. Later, it turns to the present tense. And then he gives you little notes here. Now, in my class, I would not like to see this bullet point list. I would like you to put things like this into sentence format if they matter, okay? Bullet points like this are fine for your presentation or any handouts you might want to make for your classmates, but I would want this to be paragraph format annotation, okay? Here's Allison Reed working on a sports column, and she does the same thing that the student who was annotating Thomas Paine earlier does, right? She talks about here what doesn't work, whereas this earlier student was talking about what did work in Paine's pamphlet. Reed is talking about what doesn't work in Martin's article, Yankees Mystique Over, right? So it's self-published. He's got a website, right? And she says, I've included this because it's terrible. It's what not to do. And it's okay for you to do that, right? Here's another. She's working on songs. The song is Best Days. And she says, this song has a more complicated accompaniment part than many of the songs I've been listening to. But it sounds simple, right? So she goes more deeply, more specifically into the song and what it's doing, right? And then she says for her centerpiece, right, she says, I would like to try to incorporate switching keys into my writing, right? She got that idea from this source that she's annotating. So your annotations can have, they should not be about just the content of the source, right? Giving a little bit of an idea about the content is fine, but mostly what you're looking for is content about how the source is written, how the source fits within the genre, and what it has taught you about the genre. Okay, so I'm going to leave this PDF now. I'm going to go back to week 9, well, annotated bibliography actually. And I'm going to show you that annotated bibliography is actually a combination of bibliography on the one hand and annotation on the other. So I'm going to go to this library database search link here and open it in a new tab. And then a new window because D2L is silly. Sorry about that. So what I've done here is to give you a database search with the name bibliography within it. And so you can see we've got the Bibliography of American Literature, the online Egyptological Bibliography, the International Bibliography of Art, the MLA International Bibliography. There's also a World Shakespeare Bibliography online. So what is a bibliography? A bibliography is pretty simply a collection of all kinds of sources in one place, all right? And so if we go to the World Shakespeare Bibliography, right? I'll have to log in, just give me a second, or actually maybe I'm already logged in. If we go to the World Shakespeare Bibliography, what we have are, and actually I'm just going to go away from the search function here to the main page. It's a searchable electronic database with a comprehensive record of Shakespeare-related scholarship. Now, that term comprehensive record is what matters here. It's a bibliography. It's a complete bibliography of Shakespeare-related scholarship and productions from 1960 to the present. It has over 100,000 records. It has resources including productions, monographs, films, journal articles, digital projects, book collections, right? It costs money to subscribe, and MTSU does subscribe to it. So if we go to search and browse, right, we'll just browse first, and because, you might not know what you're looking for. Okay, so you can see that the bibliography is broken into different categories over here on the left. So you have individual works, apocrypha, editions. These are individual works of Shakespeare, apocryphal plays of Shakespeare, so plays he didn't really write, right? editions, general Shakespeareana, etc. I'm just going to go to individual works and click on one that you have all probably read before, Romeo and Juliet, right? And so once I do that, everything that has anything to do with Romeo and Juliet is going to be in this search, right? And so there are productions, there are monographs, scholarly books written by one scholar is a monograph. And so you can see that there are tons of these things here, right? I can limit my search or sort it, right? I can do document type, and this will give me, these are book chapters. This one is by Alexander Sherbanov, who I know. Jill Levinson has a book chapter there. And so you can see that the databases or bibliographies can break down by genre as well, right? So if you click on type book chapter, it'll take you to like all the different kinds of book chapters that this has. But you can see there are tons and tons and tons of book chapters, followed by books, followed by journal articles, things like that. Okay, so if I go back to this bibliographies database, this art bibliographies one might be fun or interesting for you. But again, it's a collection of all of the work pertaining to art, modern art. Here, again, it can be broken down by source type and genre, okay? You can break it down by language. You can select document types. This is a way to even further break it down. So there are book reviews and book chapters, case studies and conference papers, editorials, fiction, whatever you'd like here. Okay, this is a really great place to search for genres, but it's a bibliography because it's a complete record. Okay, so if we go back to your annotated bibliography section of the website, there's also a kind of thing called an annotation, right? And so you might be used to annotating text while you are writing. And so you can see in this video example that I'm not going to play, you can see that someone has written in the margin or underlined in a lot of the same way that I wrote in the margin and underlined when I was going through sonnets with you a moment ago. So for an annotated bibliography, you're combining annotation you're combining annotation with bibliography. Okay, so I'm going to click on this aircraft nuclear propulsion and annotated bibliography. You can see that this is part of our Defense Department. Okay, this is the Prepared for the United States Air Force History and Museums program by Bernard Snyder. The purpose of this is to show you an example of an annotated bibliography, as well as to show you that annotated bibliographies are publishable scholarship. And so you're writing something that's a grown-up genre. This is not just a school genre. This is something that can be published all on its own. And when that happens, people typically write an introduction or a rationale before the annotated bibliography itself. I'm just going to scroll down and get to the actual annotation. So here we are. The first chapter is background. So we've got citation information, right? At the very top here, atomic power and industry. And then we have annotation, okay, where the author has summarized and evaluated the source that he's annotated. You can see that the annotated bibliography works in alphabetical order. The first starts with the word atomic. The second starts with the last name Bennett, right? And again, for Bennett Dwight G., ceramic coatings and ceramic bodies for aircraft power systems, he has annotated, summarized, evaluated the source, okay? And he does this throughout. Now, he comes out of alphabetical order here, so we need to go back and see whether this is actually alphabetical order. It's not, but look, it's chronological. So March 13th, 1948, July 30th, 1948. What do you think might be the reason that an annotated bibliography dealing with background would be chronological? Yeah, because it's working with history, right? So if it's background information, it wants to move forward in time. So we're dealing with 1948, lots of that. June of 48, we can scroll down and see that, oh, well, that theory is wrong too, because this is 1914. Maybe he just messed up his alphabetical order, and it's as simple as that. It's, if I knew him, I would ask him why he had done this. Okay. Typically, though, annotated bibliographies are in alphabetical order. So I'm going to go back now to this page here and back to annotated bibliographies. I'm going to skip over Milton's sonnets and instead go to a selective annotated bibliography of African American history and cultural studies by Moresi. So again, there is an introduction to the bibliography that's fairly long, and then we get into the portioned off annotations. Now, these annotations are much shorter than the ones we've seen elsewhere, but that's partially because of publication constraints and partially because she just wants to put this together to get people to read it, right? And the more people can see in this, the more sources she can fit in, the more she can represent her field. So I'm going to go back one more time to your annotated bibliography section, and I'm going to show you this Autism Transition and Employment annotated bibliography. This is put together at the Autism Center for Excellence at VCU, and it doesn't have a note to start with. It just goes and begins to annotate. Now, it limits its years from 2008 to 2014. It just lets you know that this is the time period I'm going to cover, right? That might be useful for you if you're dealing with a very old genre, okay? But you can see it's in alphabetical order, and they have given citation information and then written annotations. These are available to you on D2L so that you can learn more about the form of annotated bibliography, and I look forward to working with you on your own bibliographies